When Titans walked, there was a time when the Earth was colder, wilder, and more dangerous than any memory we carry now. Europe was not a continent of countries, but a frozen world of ice and bone. Wind howled across tundras. Saber-tooth stalked the dusk. Mammoths thundered across the steppe, and in the shadows, something enormous moved. Not beast, not quite man, but both. They weren't a myth. They weren't a story. They left no scrolls, no carvings, no kingly tombs. But the Earth remembered, the ones that should not exist. For decades, scientists dismissed the legends. Stories of giants, of massive footprints, of bones too large to belong. Whispers from old tribes, etchings in forgotten walls, fables passed down by firelight. But the Earth forgets slowly. In caves, in collapsed riverbeds, and under forgotten soil, we began to find them. Skulls thicker than helmets, femurs twice the length of ours, jaws wide enough to break bone, stone tools too large for Neanderthals, hand axes too heavy for Homo sapiens. They were real, and they were not like us. Hunters or monsters. We call them archaic hominins. Some say they were a branch of Homo heidelbergensis. Others believe they were hybrids, part Neanderthal, part something older. They stood over 7 feet tall, broad as bears, with grips strong enough to crush stone. Not the product of fantasy, but of long, cold evolution. And their prey, not always animals, sometimes other humans. The Neanderthal War in the dense forests of Ice Age Europe, Neanderthals thrived. They were strong, smart, tactical, but they weren't alone. Bones of Neanderthals found with fracture patterns consistent with blunt force trauma lay beside butchered animal remains. And nearby, tools too large for Neanderthals. Axes requiring hands bigger than ours. Spears too long to wield by average humans. Something else hunted in those woods, and Neanderthals were on the menu. But it wasn't always bloodshed. Some groups may have coexisted briefly, traded, shared fire, before they vanished again. The evidence in bone at sites like Atapuerca and Bachoquiro, researchers uncovered signs of violent clashes. Cut marks on Neanderthal bones, not just from defleshing but from dismemberment. Skull fractures, crushed ribs, fire-darkened femurs. Not burial, not ritual. Consumption. And not by wild beasts, but by upright ones. Ones with fire, with planning, with purpose. We were not the only ones who looked at another human and saw food. Shadows of giants. They were never many, these giants, but they left marks far deeper than their numbers. They stalked the edges of our world, lived in climates harsher than we could withstand, ventured farther north, endured the long dark. They weren't just predators. They were competitors for territory, for mates, for survival itself, and perhaps for dominance. Why did they vanish? For all their strength, they disappeared, not in one place, but everywhere. Why? Some say it was the cold, others disease or isolation. But one theory remains: we outlasted them. Smaller, more social, better at sharing knowledge. Where they hunted, we cooperated. Where they fought alone, we built networks. Brains, not brawn, won the war of endurance. And in the silence that followed, we inherited the world, the blood they left behind. And still, they are not entirely gone. In our DNA, traces remain. Genes for bone density, for immunity, for metabolism, passed down like whispers from ancestors no one remembers. You may carry them now, flickers of giants beneath your skin, in the grip of your hand, in the fire of your lungs, in the darkness of your eyes. Legends that remember long after they vanished, stories remained. Tales of giant men in the hills, of monstrous warriors in the fog. Myths from Norse, Slavic, and Celtic lands of beings who lived before time. They may not be fiction, just memories stretched thin across centuries. We remember them not with facts, but with fears. What makes us human? Was it size, strength, the ability to kill, or the choice not to? The giants may have ruled with power, but we ruled with memory, with tools that taught others to use tools, with fire passed down, not hoarded, with story. And in the end, that may be why we're here. And they're not. Echoes in the dark. Somewhere in a cave, a giant once crouched beside a fire. He cracked bone for marrow, watched shadows dance on stone. He didn't know his kind would end, that his bones would become questions, that his story would be lost. But part of him, a spark survived. In us, in how we walk, how we breathe, how we remember. The final footprints. When you walk alone in the woods, and feel a presence behind you. When wind moves through the trees like breath, remember this. Once, giants walked here, and though they are gone, they left footprints in the dirt, in our stories, and in our blood. Subscribe to Epic Echoes, where ancient giants still whisper. Bones that don't belong. Paleontologists sometimes speak of outliers, bones that don't fit the chart, skulls that don't fit the timeline. Massive molars found beside tiny tools, femurs wider than any Neanderthals, toes so thick they strain modern anatomy. Some say it's misclassification, others that it's something else. A cousin branch long overlooked, a population adapted to hunt megafauna, and perhaps even us. When bones don't belong, it's not always because they're wrong. Sometimes they tell a story no one is ready to hear. The night they came, imagine it. Your Neanderthal camp is quiet. Children sleep, fire crackles. Then a sound in the dark. Not wolf, not wind, but footfalls, deliberate, heavy, approaching. You grab a club. Your mate wakes, a child whimpers. And from the dark, something steps into the firelight, taller than any man you've seen, with a gaze not wild, but human. And in its hand, your own tool made larger. The last thing you see is not teeth, not claws, but understanding before the world goes black. Hybrids in the fog. In recent years, genome studies revealed something unexpected. Multiple hominin species interbred. Modern humans carry Neanderthal DNA. Some carry Denisovan genes, but a few carry sequences from an unknown hominin. What if those giants were part of that mystery? What if they didn't vanish but blended? Not erased but diluted. Their shadows still live in high-altitude lungs, in freakish strength, in rare skeletal traits found in remote populations. The fog of time hides the truth, but the DNA remembers. Why giants were born cold favors the large. Bergman's rule says animals in colder climates grow bigger, to conserve heat, to survive winter. Now apply that to humans. The Ice Age demanded size, muscle mass to carry meat, endurance to hunt mammoth, density to survive cold nights. Giants weren't accidents, they were answers to a world that wanted us dead. Evidence buried by time is a cruel archivist. Wood rots, skin disappears, even bones dissolve. We may have found only a fraction of what once walked. Caves collapsed, floods erased, ash buried whole valleys, and still archaeologists find scattered signs of footprint too large. A spearhead no hand today could throw. A rib cage with claw marks from no known predator. Maybe giants didn't vanish quickly. Maybe they faded slowly, hunted to the edge by rising numbers of us, until they were only myth. Legends and new clothes. In almost every culture, there are stories of giants. The Anakim of the Bible, the Jotnar of Norse myth, the Nephilim, the ogres of Slavic tales, the Rakshasas of India. We tell ourselves these were metaphors. But what if they weren't? What if they were memories? Memories retold so many times they grew horns and fangs. But once, they had names, families, fires of their own. The final battle. Some point, the last encounter happened. The last time a smaller Homo sapiens stood across from one of them. Perhaps it was peaceful. A gift exchanged, a nod, and retreat. Or perhaps it was war. A desperate struggle for resources in a winter too long. And when it was over, the giant lay dead. And we small, numerous social remained. The ones who watched us rise. Imagine being them and watching us spread. We who cooperated. We who traveled farther. We who made art, music, myths, they once dominant, now hiding in the edges, until there were no edges left, and the last of them died unmourned. Or perhaps their bones buried under ours. The gift of fear. Their legacy isn't just in genes, it's in fear, in our legends of darkness, in our instinct to look over the shoulder, in childhood stories of beings just beyond the firelight. They made us cautious, they made us clever, because the giants once hunted us, and we never forgot. Humanity's choice. We didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we learned to choose empathy over dominance, fire over fang, memory over instinct. The giants were born of nature. We were born of culture. And in that culture, we remembered them. Stories passed down across thousands of years as warnings, as wonder, and maybe as regrets. Subscribe to Epoch Echoes, where ancient voices still whisper through time.
I, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, do solemnly swear
that you will
faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
That I will faithfully execute